this bill says that any physician who provides trans-affirming care, gender transition procedures, would be convicted of a felony. They have to serve 40 years for this offense of trying to help a trans person live a good and healthy life. So imagine this scenario, right? So you're a doctor and somebody who you think is a cis woman comes in. She's less than 26 years old, and they want some birth control pills. You prescribe those birth control pills, and later maybe that person actually was a trans guy the whole time and he just didn't tell you, or maybe he just figures out that he's trans later after you've already prescribed the medication. And also, this trans guy is taking these medications for trans reasons. It's a trans-affirming procedure for him to be on the medication that stops periods and stops pregnancies. In that case, like, is that fucking doctor gonna go to prison? Because it kind of seems like there's a case for that doctor to get put in fucking prison. And so, like, how many doctors are just going to be like, this person who's come into my clinic asking for birth control pills looks a little gay, they got short hair, so, like, I'm too scared, like, I'm a little bit hesitant, maybe I shouldn't prescribe to them, or hell, maybe I just shouldn't prescribe any birth control at all, because that could be potentially a trans-affirming procedure, or at least to anybody under the age of 26. Hello everybody, I'm back again with some distressing news for trans Americans, which is this article, which came out on the Oklahoman today. Oklahoma lawmaker wants to ban surgery for some trans adults. The person who wrote this article, I can only imagine, is a conservative who is trying to play down the seriousness of this bill that has been introduced. I mean, first of all, the headline doesn't even mention that a bill has been introduced. It also insists that that bill only bans surgery for some trans adults. I wonder which trans adults. Could it be very many of them? When I first saw this, I found out about this on Reddit. I was just scrolling in my trans spaces as I do, and I thought somebody misunderstood. I thought this couldn't be real, and no, it's real. It's real. It's here. So we get to find out in the very first sentence who is going to lose access if this bill passes, which is everyone under the age of 26. Some trans people. So I was actually 26 when I started testosterone, and a lot of the trans community considers starting HRT, starting medical transition around that age, as being a late bloomer, because by this time you have already hit the critical periods that will often prevent a lot of people from being able to pass if they start HRT. This isn't like a black and white thing. It's not the case for everyone, but generally speaking, if you are able to access HRT in your teens, you have a much better shot of appearing cis and being able to blend in with cis society if that's something that you want to do. And frankly, a lot of trans people do want to do that. One, because of dysphoria, and two, I'd argue the bigger one is because if we do pass, we are afforded the chance to not experience as much discrimination and harassment for being trans. It's my opinion that these bills very often trying to push this age further and further out. I think that they want to be able to identify trans people by how we look. I think that it terrifies them that so many of us do blend in with society. In my day-to-day life, even though I started testosterone at 26, even though I'm fucking 5'2", I tend to pass as I navigate through life. And it does make my life a little bit easier. My girlfriend is also trans. She doesn't pass as well as I do, and she faces harassment for it. They want to be able to identify us. That is important to them. That's one of the reasons why bills like these are cropping up. And of course, as always, the cruelty is the point. They don't care what they need to do to make trans people go away. They don't care if these laws make us kill ourselves or succumb to medical problems because we've already removed our gonads that produce the sex hormones that keep our bodies healthy, keep our bones healthy. They do not care what these bills do to us. They want us to go away. That is the purpose. So let's keep reading. The arguments, of course, the arguments are put up front. I really think the person who wrote this article is a goddamn conservative. Calling it a permanent solution to a temporary problem, State Senator David Bullard, this fucking guy. And by the way, I don't like body shaming, but I have a special exception for conservatives. First thing I want to say, this man looks like a gopher. Hilarious. Okay, hold on. I take it back. He doesn't look like a gopher. I did realize what it is that he reminds me of. Are you ready for this, my gamers? The goddamn beavers from Timberborn. He looks uncannily similar. Come on. How does he look like this? He's like a creature. Second, he's wearing blush, and not just any blush. It looks like a mortician did his makeup, which is very unusual. It's not a good look. The main thing I want to point out is that if you're going to be introducing laws trying to put down trans people and gender nonconforming people, I just don't think that you also get to be a cis man who wears makeup. I just don't think that these two things are compatible. However, if you are going to be a cis man who wears makeup, I do think that his makeup artist did him very dirty. They should have filled in his eyebrows. His eyebrows look awful. Like, look, dude, I have the same problem as you. Like, I got those blonde eyebrows. They're invisible, but I have the good sense to dye them, just for men. I'm allowed to use it because I'm a man, and I use it on my eyebrows, and that's one of the reasons why I'm gorgeous. Anyway, so he cites the Hippocratic Oath. He claims that most medical intervention for transgender people violates the Hippocratic Oath, which requires doctors to do no harm. So we're gonna get into that. There are a few things we need to get into with this bill, though. First one, remember what I said about this title, wants to ban surgery for some trans adults. They keep saying that. They want to ban all gender reassignment surgeries, this person writes. All right, so let's look at the bill and see if that's what it says. Would you be surprised if this motherfucker was lying and it wasn't just surgeries? So let's look at the bill and see what it actually says. I will have a link to this article and this bill in the description in case you want to look at it yourself. And let's see what is being proposed. A new section of law to be codified in the Oklahoma statutes, reads as follows. A physician or other healthcare professional shall not provide gender transition procedures to any individual under 26 years of age. So let's see how they defined gender transition procedures. Gender transition procedures means any medical or surgical service, including but not limited to physician services, inpatient and outpatient hospital services, or prescribed drugs related to gender transition that seeks to alter or remove physical or anatomical characteristics or features that are typical for an individual's biological sex, or instill or create physiological or anatomical characteristics that resemble a sex different from the individual's biological sex, including but not limited to medical services that provide puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, or other mechanisms to promote the development of feminizing or masculinizing features in the opposite biological sex, or genital or non-genital gender reassignment surgery. So this is what I want you guys to see with your very own eyes right here. Puberty-blocking drugs cross-sex hormones banned for anyone under the age of 26. So this bill would remove HRT, testosterone, estrogen, anti-androgens, from trans adults under the age of 26. Like, how many of you guys have a family member who was in the military when they were 18? And yet trans people can't get on the right hormones or put a pause button on their goddamn puberty. It's just astounding. This overreach is infuriating. I had to refilm this. I already made this video one time, but I noticed that my ears and my neck and my face were bright fucking red because I was so angry just reading this out loud to you guys. This is terrifying. This is upsetting. I really hope this does not pass. And dear God, I hope other states do not try to follow this example, but I absolutely expect that a lot of red states will. I live in Missouri. Like I've said in previous videos, I don't know how much longer it's going to be safe for me and my girlfriend to keep living in Missouri. Something that is immensely frustrating to me in this conversation about who can consent to medical transition, like at what age can you consent to transitioning? And the thing is that you may be glaringly obvious to some of you is that cis kids are able to undergo estrogenic development or virilization from testosterone. And that is not a problem because it aligns with conservative values. Like, yes, it's the naturalistic fallacy. Yes, it's, well, your body produces testosterone and God put those gonads in there. So, of course, that is the puberty that you must undergo. And something that may or may not surprise you guys is that this is explicitly written in here. The ban that is being proposed here has some people who are excluded, some people who can still access these procedures and these medications, and that would be cis kids who have precocious puberty. If you're a cisgender child and your puberty starts too early, then yes, you can get on puberty blockers because you're normal and you're going to be the gender that we want you to be, that aligns with the genitals that we want you to keep. And so, of course, you can access gender-affirming procedures as long as you're cis and plan on presenting as a cis person. Something that you guys may or may not be aware of is that most states do not have protections for intersex children. If a kid is born with ambiguous genitals, in most states, your parents can take you to a surgeon and say, hey, you know, my kid, I would like to normalize my child's body, make him look a little bit more cis. A lot of the time, this kid could be a goddamn toddler or in like elementary school age, pre-puberty. And to be clear, this is so goddamn frustrating to me because they're making these accusations. There's this imagination that trans kids are being like operated on before puberty, but that is absolutely not the case. And yet they put in these exceptions into this bill to make sure that intersex children, prepubescent intersex kids, can be operated on without their consent. Fucking disgusting. Services provided when a physician has otherwise diagnosed a disorder of sexual development, that means intersex people, that the physician has determined through genetic or biochemical testing that the person does not have normal sex chromosome structure, sex steroid hormone production, or sex steroid hormone action. And not only do they have clauses in here to make sure that intersex kids and kids with precocious puberty can access these procedures, and of course, cis kids or teenagers who want to access something like if a cis girl has PCOS or she's developing a little bit of facial hair for whatever reason, well, as long as it's not cross-sex affirmation, as long as it's cis-sex affirmation, the procedure has the green light. They also have a clause here excluding detransitioners, or trans people who are no longer legally allowed to medically transition. Those people are allowed to access cis-sex hormones, of course, and cis-sex transition procedures. I think something that a lot of people don't realize when bills like this are introduced is that cutting off the treatment that someone has been getting can really do a number on your body. And like I said earlier, they really do not care what happens to trans people as long as we fuck off and disappear. Something that's immensely frustrating to me. Like this is so incredibly medically dangerous. Like a lot of people bring up like suicide risk. Of course that's a part of it. Of course we know that transition care reduces negative mental health symptoms immensely for trans people. We know that these are life-saving procedures. We know that transition regret rates are lower than the regret rates people have for having knee or hip replacements. We know that the regret rates for transition are lower than the regret rates of giving birth to goddamn children. But aside from like this being dangerous to a person's well-being mentally and emotionally, you do realize that trans people sometimes seek out gonad removal surgeries. We're talking orchiectomy or oophorectomy. So if a trans woman, let's say she was 21 years old enough to consume alcohol and consent to joining the military, if she got an orchiectomy, she no longer has gonads that can produce the sex hormone testosterone. Something you might know about sex hormones is that they are necessary for the health of your bones, the density of your bones. Without sex hormones, this is why older people tend to, especially older women, postmenopausal cis women, tend to develop osteoporosis. There's not enough sex hormones in the body to keep the bones dense and healthy. And some women, cis women, might be prescribed estrogen, a hormone replacement therapy, in order to prevent osteoporosis or reverse it after it has onset. And so imagine this. You see where I'm going with this now. A 21-year-old trans woman, she's on hormone replacement therapy, she's on estrogen, and I think a lot of cis people don't realize that the way that the human body works is that it doesn't particularly care which sex hormone that you're on. Depends on the body part. There are some differences, but when it comes to your bone health, your body does not give a fuck if it's estrogen or testosterone. It just wants one of them to keep your bones healthy. And so for a trans woman who no longer has testicles, no longer is able to make testosterone on her own, if this bill was passed and she's under the age of 26, she's going to develop bone health problems as a 21-year-old. That's so fucked up. And of course, there was an exclusion in this bill for people in a situation like this. Basically, they would want this trans woman to have to get back on testosterone because using estrogen would become illegal for her. And the same goes for trans men. I actually kept my ovaries. I had a hysterectomy over the summer. I kept my ovaries because I've been fucking terrified of something like this happening. You know, there's a non-zero chance. I live in Missouri and they could introduce and pass a bill that would restrict my access to sex hormones. I need sex hormones to keep my body healthy. Everyone does. Cis people do. Trans people do. And I kept my ovaries whenever I had my hysterectomy over the summer because I'm fucking terrified that my access to any sex hormones could be taken away from me on the basis that I am trans. We're already seeing that in these bills that are introduced. They're saying if a cis kid has precocious puberty, they can access medication. If a cis person has whatever, they can access it. The point is removing access for trans people, and I don't want my fucking bones to deteriorate at the age of 30 because Republicans want me to fucking die. It's so scary. This is really fucking funny. Somebody asked the Senator Bullard, why 26? If you become a legal adult at 18, why 26? He said, at the age of 18, you can vote, but a vote is not a permanent change in your body that cannot be reversed. Motherfucker, puberty is a permanent change in your body, the natural puberty that you go through in your early teens. You know, if this guy was actually worried about people under the age of 26 making permanent alterations to their bodies, then why the fuck is he not passing a law that would force all kids to be put on puberty blockers when they turn 12? Or when they start showing any signs of puberty? If we're looking for consistency here, and like the obvious answer is because it's not about that. He's just fucking lying. By the way, this bill says that any physician who provides trans-affirming care, gender transition procedures, would be convicted of a felony. They have to serve 40 years for this offense of trying to help a trans person live a good and healthy life. Yeah, that's what would happen to them. Imagine, like, and it can get a little bit tricky too, right? Because what if you have a patient who is a trans guy and he wants a hysterectomy? You know, like, if maybe he has endometriosis, or maybe he just doesn't want to get pregnant anymore. It's a little bit of a fuzzy line, right? You would, you know, if you're a surgeon and you very regularly provide hysterectomies to cis women under the age of 26, and a trans man comes in and he's under 26, it's a little bit of a sticky situation, yeah? Or hell, even if a trans guy wanted something like birth control, it's just, for me personally, having periods was very dysphoria-inducing. It was very distressing to me. The potential of carrying a pregnancy was extremely dysphoria-inducing for me. And so even though I was taking a medication that cis women might take, and I was taking this in my teens and in my early 20s, I was on birth control. I've been on birth control, or I was on birth control from like age 13 or 14 until I had my hysterectomy this summer. And imagine how many doctors would become very hesitant to treat trans people for almost any reason, because they could be persecuted. They could have their goddamn license taken away and go to prison for 40 years for treating a trans person. So imagine this scenario, right? So you're a doctor and somebody who you think is a cis woman comes in. She's less than 26 years old, and they want some birth control pills. You prescribe those birth control pills, and later maybe that person actually was a trans guy the whole time and he just didn't tell you, or maybe he just figures out that he's trans later after you've already prescribed the medication. And also, this trans guy is taking these medications for trans reasons. It's a trans-affirming procedure for him to be on the medication that stops periods and stops pregnancies. In that case, like, is that fucking doctor gonna go to prison? Because it kind of seems like there's a case for that doctor to get put in fucking prison. And so, like, how many doctors are just going to be like, this person who's come into my clinic asking for birth control pills looks a little gay, they got short hair, so like I'm too scared, like I'm a little bit hesitant, maybe I shouldn't prescribe to them, or hell, maybe I just shouldn't prescribe any birth control at all, because that could be potentially a trans-affirming procedure, or at least to anybody under the age of 26, or, goddamn. Like, for real, I want you to think about what the difference between giving a hysterectomy to a 22-year-old cis woman and giving a hysterectomy to a 22-year-old trans man is under this bill if it passed in Oklahoma. Imagine how, like, precarious that would be. Like, if you're a doctor, you likely have a lawyer, and your lawyer's probably going to tell you not to do it. You know, there are several conditions where having a uterus can be not just uncomfortable, but dangerous to a person's well-being and to their life. And so, like, anytime you see something like this and you're like, oh, holy shit, this is fucked up. Surely they didn't do this on purpose. Surely this is not an outcome that they want. Like maybe if some trans people get caught in the crossfire, they'd try to make exceptions, but like there wasn't an exception from what I was reading in this bill for trans people who need something like a hysterectomy, because that can be absolutely considered a gender affirming procedure. That is part of transition for a lot of people, but it's also just a medical thing that a lot of cis people go through. Something else that a lot of cis people might not be aware of is that because of laws like these, a lot of trans people DIY our hormones. That's luckily something that I've personally never had to do. But when we cannot acquire life-saving medication legally, we acquire it illegally. And for trans men, there can be some complications. Buck Angel, famously, I made a video about this, had a uterine infection that was probably not related to his testosterone, but could have been. And either way, I can very easily imagine a situation where somebody would need a life-saving hysterectomy or an emergency hysterectomy for something like this, and being denied that surgery because it could be considered a gender transition procedure, and it could be illegal in Oklahoma. And that's so goddamn scary. And so anytime you see bills like these being introduced or passed, and you think to yourself, like, surely this was not intentional, but I mean, maybe it's not, but I mean, they sure as hell didn't consider the fact that this could kill trans people. Or if they did, they said, fuck it, do it anyway. I think I've told you guys about him before, but there is a trans man who died in, I think, 1999 or 2000 from ovarian cancer, because none of the doctors that he saw would treat him. He knew he had ovarian cancer, and he and his friends contacted every doctor they could find, and they said, no, we're not going to help you. And like, fucking Hippocratic oath my ass, fuck you, dude. And back then there wasn't a law like this prohibiting doctors from treating trans people. It was just transphobia. It was disgust. It was, I don't care, go die. You know, when I first saw this, I found out about this on Reddit. I was just scrolling in my trans spaces as I do, and I thought somebody misunderstood. I thought this couldn't be real, and no, it's real. It's real. It's here. Fuck. If you live outside of Oklahoma, there's unfortunately not a whole lot that you can do about this, except offer your support if you have the finances to help trans people that you might know of in Oklahoma. If you can just give some moral support and some solidarity to these folks, that would go a long way. But if you live in Oklahoma, I would highly recommend that you get in touch with any local LGBT organizations that might be able to help you figure out who to contact. There's an LGBT lobbying group called Freedom Oklahoma, and that might be a good resource to get started and see what you can do, see how you can get involved, and do not let this fucking happen. Trans people of Oklahoma, I'm terrified for you. I'm so sorry. And like, I don't know what to say, except I hope this doesn't pass.